Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first in 2024, January 2024, Sturgeon Moon Poetry Reading. Just a word or two about Sturgeon Moon before I introduce our featured readers for the day. Sturgeon Moon Poetry began a little over a year ago with me, Tave niece, Elizabeth Oxley, and we decided on the name Sturgeon Moon. Actually, Elizabeth Oxley, who's a longtime friend, client, and colleague of mine, selected the name after we learned that of the 29 species of sturgeon, 23 of them are endangered. And we also learned that the sturgeon moon, when Native Americans were fishing regularly, was the August full moon. And at that time, the sturgeon became very plentiful. They just broke the surface, and they were very easy to catch. But now they're endangered, as I said. We embrace all forms of poetry, and poetry is a big tent. However, we particularly highlight at this reading series lyrical narrative poetry. And so lyrical narrative poetry is sort of our sturgeon. And these monthly meetings now, they work quarterly, are sort of our sturgeon moons. There are times when we celebrate lyrical narrative poetry and listen to wonderful lyrical narrative poets. So today, I'd like to introduce our featured readers. We have two of them, McCrary Sullivan and Joan Baranow, and each of them will read a full 20 minutes, and then I have pre-selected some folks for an open mic reading, and we'll do that, and that'll be our celebration. So allow me to read Anne McCrary Sullivan's bio first. Anne McCrary Sullivan engages her passion for the natural world in both poetry and prose. Her poems examine with a trained naturalist's eye the behaviors of animals and the ecological roles of plants, insects, and geology, finding in biological detail metaphors and messages for the human spirit. An avid long-distance paddler, she has co-authored a guidebook to the 99-mile Everglades Wilderness Waterway and a book of oral histories related to the Everglades Mangrove Wilderness. Her most recent books of poems are Learning Calabar, based on experiences in Calabar, Nigeria, and Notes from a Marine Biologist's Daughter, which was published in 2023 by St. Julian Press. Retired from a career as professor of interdisciplinary studies, she is a graduate of the Warren Wilson MFA program for writers, and she is the former editor of the English Journal, and she resides in Florida. And I understand she's recently moved. So let's give a huge welcome to Anne McCrary Sullivan as she reads.
What fun to be here with all of you. I see some people I really love and some I have not seen in a very long time, in addition to some new faces who I hope will be friends in the future. Thank you, Terry, for organizing this. And Joan, it's a privilege to be sharing this stage with you. I admire your work. I'm happy to have this book in the world, Notes from a Marine Biologist's Daughter. Those of you who know me well know that my mother has had a profound impact on my life. I did not realize what a profound impact it was myself until I went to the Everglades in 2003 as poet in residence and found myself immersed in wilderness. It wasn't long before I realized I wanted to be my mother when I grew up, and everything changed. So here we go. I will read a few poems that focus specifically on my mother, then some that come out of my own sort of naturalist eye, and then we'll come back to mother. So, lexicon. I want to defy what I've been taught, fill my lines with scientific names, creatures I have known, tunicates, ctenophores, mollusca. And if I were to praise the moon, in my childhood, Latin names were as ordinary as rice, as likely to come up at the kitchen table, bryozoans, vanilla, butter please. And that moon, over water, over mud, always a prediction, when to look for limulus, when to dig for Phytophthora. Every word is ordinary if you enter into relation with it. No word is ordinary if you enter into relation with it. Copepod holds the memory of a mother as wondrously as bread. The microscope on the kitchen table. Sometimes she slid it aside. We ate in its presence. Sometimes we ate at a different table. Sometimes we had a picnic on the back steps. Sometimes she bent over it all morning. Sometimes she bent over it at night. She looked at water in the petri dish, saw things we didn't see, stirred the water with a needle-fine instrument. Sometimes she could not contain her delight. That cute little copepod looks like he's riding a unicycle. Sometimes she tried to show us, but I usually couldn't quite focus. All the while, she monitored pots on the stove, pans in the oven. She counted. She wrote the numbers in notebooks lined up on the shelf. My mother, learning. This is a poem in 5 parts. 1. She brought home leaves and stems, pressed them between newspapers. At night, she took them out, spread them at the edges of the living room, walked the circuit again and again, naming. I lay in the dark, listened to her Latin chant. 2. This is the book she took with her in the boat. I turned the pages slowly, some wrinkled from humidity. Look at tinted plates like watercolors fading, anemones, sponges, crustacea, bivalves, creatures in tubes under the mudflats, images hidden in pages with long lists of names. One by one, she learned them. 3. When the mosquitoes that did not bite, but ate larvae of the ones that did, would not breed in the laboratory, she brought them home, hung damp rags from the ceiling of her bedroom, turned them loose. For weeks, great care not to leave the bedroom door open. 4. Before she could afford to go to college, she stood in the factory, ironing neckties one after another, conjugating French verbs. 5. I am learning waterways, teaching my paddle how to go without a chart. I rehearse the sequence of channels and bays, Crooked Creek, Sunday Bay, Oyster Bay, Alligator Bay. Where all the mangroves look the same, I stare until I see their difference. One day, turning from Roberts River into the cutoff, my arms are suddenly not mine. I watch and feel my mother's arms, young and strong, make every confident stroke complete the turn. Lacking my mother's arms, I reach for the green embrace of a wild forest that stands in water, as did she, filled with wonder. Into the darkening forest, I sing, croak, burble, screech, caw, keen into frog throb, wind wail, thunder, rocked in wilderness roar. How to spend the night in a canoe, coldest night of the year. When a north wind has blown the water from around your boat, left you surrounded by mud deep enough to swallow you whole, When you have taken the shock of a rising tide that stopped short, turned away, acknowledge the inevitable, get to work. Remove everything that has served its purpose, empty canisters, empty jugs, set them on mud. Spread tarps, mats, sleeping bags in the bottom of the canoe. Put on all the clothes you can and use the rest to insulate the boat. Lie down in the nest you have made. Pull over you the folded tent. Wait. The moon you have watched grow larger each night, nearly full, floats with Orion, balances over the wooden paddle planted in mud. Trace with your eyes the dark shapes of unnamed mangrove islands. Listen for the dolphins blow in the channel you can't quite get to. Feel how your face grows colder, your body warmer. This is wilderness. It holds you, pins you at the center of the universe, suspends you in the essential. Time has nothing to do with clocks. Tides defy their charts. Watch the slow arcs of passage, stars and moon. Feel yourself warm, free, breathing. Know how lucky you are. Poem with wings. At the window, I sit with patterns of light, a brush of wind, absence in presence, a very small bird. Peace and a restless spirit ride the same breath. Loss and fulfillment walk in the same wind. I am the tree, rooted and sturdy. I am the wind passing through. I am the fruit and its nemesis worm. I am dust, I am desert, my banks overflow with flood. I am the carcass and the vulture circling higher. Each day I sit with the same sun, the same wind, and not, and clouds and rain, never a repeated plot. I stare at the days one after another, delights and miseries of leaf and weather, the come and go of wings. If I could sit long enough, if I could stare long enough, one restlessness or another always presses. How can I know what would happen if I stayed and stared, pleasure and ache conjoined? How long is long enough? And now the cardinals come, brilliant in their red perfection, knowing what they are, claiming their place in the order of the yard, open-beaked, full-throated, singing. When grief opens a cavern in me, I let the thunder roll there, echo with the hawk's cry, the jay's shriek, until the blue-black sky cracks and a rain comes heavy falling, until the laboring pines whirl against the agitated oaks, until the earth grows dark with wet, until the aquifer fills. I'm a little ahead of time here. I'm reading faster than I did when I practiced this. But that's okay. We're going to go ahead to the mother piece at the end. I have an end note that I'm going to read to you about this title, Notes from a Marine Biologist's Daughter. This was first the title of a poem at Gettysburg Review. Then it was the title of an article which included the poem at Harvard Educational Review. Now it is the title of a book. Here the title retires, but I will continue to think of all my work as notes from a marine biologist's daughter. So here's the poem. Notes from a marine biologist's daughter. My mother loves the salty mud of estuaries, has no need of charts to know what time low tide will come. She lives by an arithmetic of moon, calculates emergences of mud, waits for all that crawls there, lays eggs, buries itself in the shallow edges of streamlets and pools. She digs for Chytopterus, yellow and orange worms that look like lace. She leads me where ranilla bloom, purple and white colonial lives, where brittle stars like moss cling to stone. She knows where the seahorse wraps its tail and the unseen lives of plankton. My mother walks and sinks into an ooze, centuries of organisms ground to pasty darkness. The sun burns at her shoulders in its slow passage across the sky. Light waves like pincers in her mud dark hair. And we'll leave it there. Terry, we'll turn this over to Joan. This is Joan's book. I love her work, so I'm really happy to be sharing this day with her. And I've actually made a request. I've asked her to read a specific one of her poems. She said she will. So
Thank you so much, Anne, for that wonderful reading. You could have gone on, and you're right. I think you read your poems a little faster for
I
us,
did,
right?
but it's okay.
You're right. It was beautiful. And I've asked both of our featured poets today, and if you'll do that soon here, and if you can put in the chat perhaps a link where we can purchase this book or other books of yours, that would be wonderful. Okay, that's great.
Okay, if I can learn how to do that. I don't do this very much.
It's okay.
Everything's at Amazon. Everything's at Amazon. So
we'll just look up your name in Amazon. All right, very good. Thank you once again for that reading. That's just beautiful. Really, really appreciate that. So our next featured reader is Joan Baranow. I've just had the delight to meet Anne for the first time. I read her book a few months back, and I'm glad to announce that my review of Notes from a Marine Biologist's Daughter is going to be published in a future issue of the Banyan Review. If it's not in the spring issue, it'll be in the summer issue. So I'm delighted about that, and I will let everybody know when that is published. I'm actually working still on a review of Joan's work, Joan Baranow, and that will find a home as well. So I'd like to introduce Joan now. I've known her for quite some time and love her work. This is her second appearance at Sturgeon Moon Poetry, and I've been to several of her readings. So Joan is the author of 6 poetry collections, including Reading Zimborska in a Time of Plague, which won the 2021 Brick Road Poetry Book Contest, and A Slight Thing Happiness, St. Julian Press, 2022. Her poems have appeared in the Paris Review, the Gettysburg Review, Blackbird, Forklift, Ohio, Poetry East, JAMA, and elsewhere. A VCCA fellow and a member of the community of writers, she founded and teaches in the low residency MFA program in creative writing at Dominican University of California. With her husband, David Watts, she has produced the PBS documentary, Healing Words, Poetry, and Medicine. Her feature-length documentary, The Time We Have, presents an intimate portrait of a teenager facing terminal illness. Joan lives and writes in Mill Valley, California. And as I said, this is her second appearance at Sturgeon Moon. So let's welcome her. And Joan, look forward to hearing you read again.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks so much for organizing these readings. They're always really terrific. And I loved what you read. I look forward to getting your book. And thank you all for being here. I'm always anxious, before I give a reading. And then when I see all your beautiful, familiar faces, I feel really happy to be here. I'm going to start with a poem by a dear friend and beautiful poet who passed away in December. His name is Jeff Oakes, and I'm going to read this poem from his first book called The Unknown Country. And the poem is called Sadness. Sometimes in the tiredness of sadness, you find the middle-less remains of a chipmunk, something the cat left, something still hard as a walnut, skin still pink as pink silk. Sometimes in the midst of that languor and the sighs that send the first green fly buzzing away from the body, are your dog's unflinching deep brown eyes looking at you from the pen, from behind the fence, understanding, urging you to walk and to take him with you. So I will read the poem that Anne requested. It's from the book, A Slight Thing, Happiness. Both of our books were published by St. Julian Press. And so I'll just jump right in. It's for my mother, this poem. And she had, on a lark, driven down from Ohio where she was living, down to the Gulf Coast of Florida. And she found this little house up on stilts at the end of the Swanee River. And she said, I just have to get this house. And it became her sanctuary. And that's what the title of the poem is, Sanctuary. You chose a place hard to get to, 23 miles to the Gulf from Old Town, past longleaf pines and wiregrass marsh. We took the interstate from Orlando together, stopping for biscuits and grits at a southern kitchen along the way. Halfway to Swanee, on the country highway flanked by solid woods, we gasped at a panther dashing straight across. I must have been on grad school break. You were only 48. 2 rooms and a bathroom up on stilts, a hot pot for coffee. Years later, I found you a little fridge. Back then, it was snacks from the package store, an evening out at Salt Creek restaurant that would gladly fry a day's catch. You talked of building a dock, of getting a little boat. Your neighbor, Louise, wiry and tough, was enough of a loner to suit you. Such an alien place with skittery palmetto bugs under the garbage bin, Spanish moss snagged on bald cypress, crepe myrtle, cabbage palms, your own curve of canal, a single banana tree, rattlesnakes and cottonmouths, magnolia blossoms like white doves nested among rusty leaves. The heat smelled sweet. You'd climb to the roof for a view and a smoke, take photos of 5 turtles sunning on a fallen log slanted into the canal, enough to keep you driving back and forth from Ohio with the cats until you retired, by then too late to enjoy it much. You believed people were made for happiness. My last visit there, you kept your cheer despite the growth undiagnosed. After you died, we found Christmas gifts still wrapped among the clutter. I've stopped yearning for a heavenly reunion. There are days when I don't even think of you. On this opposite coast, I look from a window into an overgrown plum tree reaching into an oak. The oak arches, holds to the earth. And now I'm going to read a poem because my friend Vivian Teeter is here, and just want to do a little call out for her book, Breath Enough, beautiful book. And she had recently shared with me a poem that was a celebration of punctuation. And I remembered this poem called Ode to That. That as in the word that. And there's an epigraph that I kind of made up. When duty calls, you are demonstrative. double jointed knuckle, swinging bridge, quick bucket brigade between phrases. You serve your subjects with dignity, carrying messages under a brimmed hat without ever reading them yourself. Lovers' humble go-between, empty of fact yet pregnant with intent. A handshake between strangers, a traveler's delicate sandal print refusing rest. You make sure things receive their essence, whether they be the queen's royal foot, lovely of length, regrettably stinky, or the pig's archaic grunt. Oh, relative pronoun, oh, verbal glue. So few applaud your honest work, without which, forgive me my use of your upstart kin, we'd lack such lush restriction. The pollen that sought his own kind flew from stigma to sweet, sticky stigma, finally bursting deliciously inside the narrow-throated camas lily. That's from my book, In the Next Life. My most recent book, Reading Szymborska in a Time of Plague, much of it was written during the pandemic. And so the first couple of sections are about that really weird time. I'm going to read, I think, a couple poems from that. Shelter in place, 6th week. But humans still make plenty of racket. Road crews are at it, chewing up asphalt, laying drains. The neighbor, who's usually so quiet, shouts at her son, "Don't touch that again." Just this morning, ambulance sirens, twice. Kids skid down the street on outgrown scooters just to get out of the house. Out on the porch, behind the fence, as far as the curb, we wonder aloud what's for lunch. And then there's my son, who, still in school, logs on for oral drills until 8 p.m. when the whole town howls. You'd never guess anything was amiss. Remember that, the noise we'd make at the end of the day. The middle section of the book is a sequence I call summer guzzles, and they're sort of pseudo guzzles. They were inspired by Galway Canal in his book. I think it's Imperfect Thirst, where he has the Sheffield guzzles. And I found with this additional time we had, writing poems with long lines, which I'd never done before, and the guzzles seem to lend themselves to that. So there's 7 parts. I'm just going to read one section. It's number 4. The sun doesn't touch the earth all at once. We need doses of dark, more or less in equal parts to light, which is why at night the roaches roam the kitchen floor for crumbs and whatever muck we carry in, bacteria from the grocery store, pathogens from the bank, office bugs, Uber germs, despite a 6-foot social distance and hand sanitizer at the door. We're covered with the stuff. 300,000 years of evolution, yet 90% of us isn't. Better not to see inside your stomach. Better not to think of mites hunkering down in your pores. At night, they climb from canyons of skin to mate along an eye rim. After that, they bust apart, spraying us with ick. Or, as this webpage puts it, we're codependent from the start. Like fungus, hitched and cross-stitched, fused with the flesh that feeds us, that feeds on us. Even so, Joan, from that wet dark, we swim into a world flooded with fluorescence, not even bruised. And on a little brighter note, much of these poems are pretty dark, but Here's what you might call a list of my favorite things. It's called semi-precious. Hardware stores, fallow fields, ordinary ballpoint pens, rain at night, summer fans, a tidy desk with plenty of blank paper, middle-aged Mauricio and Caesar playing soccer on Sunday afternoons, bird calls I'd like to recognize, bright blankets on the beach, each with its own radio, blizzards, standing in them with my hands over my face, laughing, especially at nothing, popcorn, vanilla icing, cheese, talking in the kitchen, taking my time, decaf, takeaway cups, walking through fields, sweat, rank odor of low tide, going barefoot, Paul Simon, cliff edges, open windows, iced tea, anything Italian, white socks and sneakers, distant hills. And the last few poems I'll read are new poems. Last year, I underwent chemo and radiation, and I've written a few poems about that. So I'll read two of those and then one last poem. This is called Oropharynx. Your scan shows nothing but shadows, yet the surgeon digs in, finds 50 nodes under your skin, not one with the right answer. You think the nozzle's broken, but actually your pipe's split. Yikes, he says. You should have come before all this water wasted. When all else fails, tie it off and slap the vein. The intake nurse taps her phone, showing off her cartoon birthday party displays. Another unthreads loops of tubing. By week 3, you're hunched over in hallways, eating Cheerios snuck from home that's now an infusion salon, recliners wiped down daily, and snacks stacked in plastic drawers. The parking's free, but you pay with phlebotomies. He says, you want your body back? You mean the one you walked in with? That first breath hurt. That's why the baby cries. Gravity's riptide, a heap of blooming algae frosted with salt. It was wet and warm in there until something grabbed you by the head and pulled. And so this is called after cancer treatments. A silicone tube still hangs from the hole punched into your stomach, but this morning, your tongue remembers the taste of a Ritz cracker. And after weeks of atmospheric rivers, today the sky swipes its clouds to a far ridge and the neighbors are out walking their dogs. So what if your doctor says radiation ages the body faster, that you must swallow hard the rest of your life? You sweep the deck and set out cushions, confident the good weather will last. Newly opened wisteria sends out plumes of peppery perfume. Soon they'll pull the tube out, that thin umbilicus, freeing you from dependency, from the cord that kept you alive. All those days you could do nothing but pet your cat, grateful for his wordless gaze. Thank you. And the last poem will also be for my mother. And it's a cento or cento, however you want to pronounce it, which is it turns out, I didn't know this, but it's a form that goes way, way back to the early Greeks. And it's a poem made up by lines from other people's poems. It had been created as a form of tribute. So this poem is made by lines from other poets I really admire, and it's called Ode to Motherhood. Older this morning, the moon wants to shine plainly as at the beginning of creation, And yet I think her breasts are many years milkless, threadbare, a nothing color, the color of ash, as if something with wings was crushing itself. And I could tell, to be born with breasts in time, they are useless. These husks will turn to dust. Now I can ask, what about my life? Who is that hollow woman? Who am I? Impossible to imagine the youngest is grown and gone. My sons, it's true, I'm an old bat batting around, falling apart. I've never been fast or good, never listened, never understood what you were becoming. You were so brave to enter our world. Always there was some bleeding, the skinned knee in spite of me. I think when my head finally cracks, I will try not to be deaf. I will listen to what you say. For you, even then, while you were blooming within me, were looking on as if you already knew our story, the earth under its arch of sky, one perfect moon, fuller of water. You were settled as if you knew you were already planning a city, and I want to see it. I want to believe this, that I too was at the mercy of something untouched and still possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you. Beautiful poems from two magnificent poets. Let's all give them a big round of applause again for their poetry, for their reading. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. And please put, Joan, where we may purchase your books on chat, okay? And if either of you have other readings coming up, please let us know in chat how we can access those readings, whether they're in person for those of you on the West Coast or East Coast, and for Zoom as well, okay? We'd love to, and I'd be glad to share that on Facebook and even in a constant contact email. Very good. All right. So I do have a very short list of folks for our open mic. I honestly don't know if any of them are here. I had a list of 4, and one of them contacted me before the reading and said she wasn't going to be able to be here. So I'll just ask, is Jane McPherson here? I didn't see her on the list. Is Jane here? Oh, good. Okay, Jane, would you read a poem for us for our open reading? Would you open us up?
Hi there. Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Good to be here. Wonderful, touching reading today. I want to read a haiku. I've been writing a lot of haiku lately and want to share that, but I will also to make an announcement that there's a haiku group meeting on February the 7th at 3 o'clock at the Marin Art and Garden Center. Would love to have more people joining.
Good. Thank you for that. And if you could put that in chat too, so folks will remember, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This one is wreath, tree, winter green, round hug at the edge of woe, velveteen snow branch.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very much. Now, Jane, is your friend Glenn here?
I don't know. I didn't look at the.
I didn't see him. Is Glenn Ingersoll here? Glenn, Jane reserved a spot for you to read. If you're here, you have the floor. Okay. And I didn't see Catherine Clark Sales come in. Catherine, are you here? No. Oh my goodness. This is a first. For the open mic, we had a haiku. Now that's as short of an open mic that you can possibly get, okay? All right. Well, never let it be said that we go over here at Sturgeon Moon Poetry. Ron, I think you're still here. Do you have any announcements to make? Is Ron Starbuck still here? Is the
Hey,
editor?
I had to
Hi,
mute
Ron.
myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would announce is that St. Julian Press will have a booth at AWP 2024. The booth location is 1502. And I'm sure you'll be able to find it easily if you're there at AWP. So come by and say hello.
Great.
We're also going to do a poetry reading on Friday night at an offsite location, and people are welcome to join us there too. And if you have questions about that, you can reach out to me. I'll try to put the chat in here. Well, Terry, you can share my email address if you want.
Yes. Okay. I'll be glad to. Yes.
Okay.
Right. Okay. We have a long-standing tradition here at Sturgeon Moon. Somebody just asked to open it to the floor. I'm sure anyone here who wants to read would do a lovely job, but I've had some experiences in the past that have caused me to have a policy of Sturgeon Moon poetry to basically know who's going to be read and vet them first. So if you would like to read at an open mic for Sturgeon Moon, we're not having a Sturgeon Moon reading in February. We will be having a Sturgeon Moon reading in March. So please email me and get on the open mic list. I like to have at least 8 or 10 open mic readers, and we'll do that. Does anyone else have an announcement about poetry readings or their books that have been published or anything else relevant to the poetry world? Joan, I saw you say something.
No, I think Myrna.
Oh, Myrna, yes.
Yes, I just want to throw this out there, cast a net, as it were. I'm editing an anthology of fishing poems by female poets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a wonderful collection that have come, of poems that have come in, but I'm still looking for more. So if you have written, if you're a woman or a woman identifying as a woman and have written a poem or poems about fishing, metaphorical, fantastical, literal, narrative, send them my way. I'll put my email address in the chat. And if you come across any that you admire, send them my way as well. I'm going to extend the open call. Deadline was end of January, but I'm going to extend it into end of February.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm going to send a chat to everyone here. I think if I say meeting group chat, everyone will receive it. And this is going to be Ron Starbuck, the editor, founder of St. Julian Press, his email address. So if you have need any information about the booth or the reading at AWP, please email him. I'm copying this off right now, Ron. RPS 2053. And that's at att.net, correct, Ron?
Yes, it's att.net.
Okay. Okay. I just placed that in the chat. Very good. All right. Well, we're going to be taking a month off, and our next reading will be, as I said, in March. It'll be the fourth Saturday in March, and you'll be hearing about that and who will be reading. And I hope everyone, if you don't have any of Joan's books, that you think about purchasing them, as well as Anne McCrary Sullivan's book from St. Julian Press that she read from today. Poetry books are difficult to sell. They really are. And many people enjoy poetry, but if you have the ability, please buy these poets' books. And I think it'll be something that you'll be happy that you did. Okay. Thank you to everyone. Terrific reading today. Thank you again, Anne and Joan. Appreciate your
Thank
reading
you,
so much.
Terry.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Ron.
Be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Terry.
Bye-bye. Bye,
Have a
everybody.
wonderful winter, all of you who are in cold weather. Stay warm.
Mm.